know the old saying about a picture being worth 1,000 words? In truth, some photos can go beyond words. They can jostle long-forgotten memories. They can evoke joy and sadness and hope. They can cause alarm or bring out a smile. They can spark the imagination, lift our hearts, and make us think. Sometimes, they can even change the world. Here in the beautiful surroundings of East Idaho, we're lucky to have an energetic and imaginative community of photographers, many of whom can be found as perennial contenders in the annual East Idaho Community Photo Contest. This multifaceted, free-to-enter competition showcases some of the best photography in the region and is now celebrating its 15th year. As in past contests, the 2024 edition features images in categories including portraits, events, sports and leisure, nature and wildlife, scenics, birds and beyond. For 2024, let's start things off with a look at this year's editor's picks. Before diving into this year's top entries, let's chat about what we look for in a great photograph. Spoiler alert, a lot of it is kind of subjective. The emotional component is a huge deal. It's the gold standard, really, and how a picture resonates from person to person is going to vary quite a bit. But before we get to that stage, we have to do some painful cutting. First to go are images that have obvious problems with the basics: focus, exposure, resolution. These issues are easy to spot. That leads to further scrutiny of more detailed factors like color, contrast, and composition. A modern camera can do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to rendering correct color, highlights, and shadows. But until the robot apocalypse arrives, relying on the auto settings of your camera will lead to mistakes. Another common problem is what the photographer does to the picture after pressing the shutter. Technology has its perks, but if you go nuts with processing, chaos can ensue. Sadly, many submissions are ruined this way. The last technical factor we look at is composition. It's often the deciding factor between images that make the final round and those that don't. Consider the images you've already seen. Most of them are beautifully composed. In some cases, they simply adhere to the famous rule of thirds. In others, the elements of design are more subtle. In such cases, it doesn't seem to matter whether the design is real and intentional or just imagined, or just a happy accident, for that matter. Sometimes a photo's appeal can be traced quite literally to how the image makes use of lines and how those lines interact. It really doesn't matter if the rules are bent, broken, or ignored, or in some cases, right on the nose. What matters is that the image works. Once these elements all come together, the only ingredient left is emotive power. Does it have it or not? In the end, does the image actually say something? Here's our collective attempt to answer that question with our top entries from 2024. There's one more historical image I'd like to share. It was taken at 3:34 p.m. Idaho Falls time on July 21, 1969 by Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins. Using a Hasselblad 500 EL camera, Collins shot this iconic image before docking Apollo's Mission Command module with the lunar lander. If the famous pale blue dot photo by the Voyager spacecraft hadn't inspired Carl Sagan to write his famous excerpt about humanity, this image by Collins would have more than sufficed. Every human in the world at that time, including the 2 astronauts returning from the lunar surface, is contained in this image. All except the photographer himself, who at that point was also setting records for being the most isolated person in history. I can't think of a better example than this one to describe what purpose photography serves to the human condition. It's about 2 things at once in my mind. It's about setting yourself apart from the world, but only to marvel at its beauty. From all of us at Idaho Falls Magazine, we cordially invite you to participate in our next annual East Idaho Community Photo Contest. For participation rules and procedures, visit our contest page at idahofallsmagazine.com. You can also dial us up at 208-542-2217.